in my 20s and 30s and 40s. I learned that much younger because I was raised by a single parent. That's not to say that, people with two parents can't do that. But what I'm saying is in that particular situation, that child was not able to compartmentalize. And so part of me wants to say that's because we coddle. This is where I'm getting into that gray area, and it's a very dangerous area, and I know. I think, and I have gender dysphoria, but I think sometimes we enable the behavior. I think sometimes we don't encourage. I'm trying to word this very carefully, which is why I'm going so slow right now. We encourage a behavior to a point. We don't teach coping skills. We don't teach coping mechanisms. And again, one, because we're not psychologists as parents, even though we kind of have that role sometimes. We don't teach our children how to compartmentalize those emotions and say, yes, it's okay to feel this way. And yes, if you need a safe space, that's fine. Or yes, if you need to go, in your room or go to, like I said, an LGBTQ safe space, if, that's fine and dandy. That you can't just run away from something that happens and hide, because if we run away from the things that scare us or the things that make us mad, then guess what? It's still going to be there. It's going to be there when we get back. It doesn't just go away. And that's the thing we find, with nowadays, and myself included, and that's kind of where I'm going with this. Kids that get bullied because they're LGBTQ+. The bullies don't go away. They continue. And unfortunately, some of these cases we see where, kids are doing self-harm because of the bullying, because of the anxiety and the stress. And I'm not saying that compartmentalizing or that coping skills are a 100%, fix-all, Band-Aid. They're not. But they give us that cushion. They give us that little bubble that we need to get to that safe space, to get to someone that we can talk about without having to show those bullies that it gets to us. Or, and not even bullies. I mean, and I'm not calling the people at my own fire company bullies, but like I said, I had to compartmentalize those emotions until I could, get somewhere safe. And in my moment, it was inside my car, bawling my eyes out. And then I could think. After I had gotten the emotions out and how mad I was and how hurt I was, then I could think. And I waited until the next event. Which happened to be the Saturday before Easter, and I confronted people. I confronted people and said, "Hey, look, my name is," and they went, "Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, I forgot." And again, at the firehouse, there's a lot of older members, and so it's definitely possible. And they've known me for so long; they're going to call me. But if I keep advocating for myself and I keep saying, "Hey, look, my name is," sooner or later, for the most of them, it should stick. And I did have people who went, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're absolutely right, Gabe." And then it was funny because then it was Gabe and she, and even my stepsister, who looked at me funny. We kind of sat next to each other because someone called me Gabe and then turned around and said she, and we both looked at each other and went, "Well, that was confusing." But like I said, if I didn't have the time and if I didn't have the ability to get to that safe space and compartmentalize and think and process and develop a plan for how I was going to attack this, I could have very well have quit the fire company that night. If our kids don't have the ability to understand, now's not the time to have this meltdown, or I have to figure out how to put this in a box in my brain and put it on a shelf for just a moment so that I can think of a rational way to handle this, it can come out much worse. Fortunately for that situation, with that young person, that 911 call, it was able to be handled, and the child's inability to get beyond the dead naming was not catastrophic. But if I go on a fire call, God forbid, if somebody needs me to grab a line from a truck and they call me one name, I'm not going to stand there and go, my name is, I can't. That's somebody's house or somebody's car or somebody's kid. And again, please understand, I'm comparing the brain pans basically of a 40-something-year-old to a 14-year-old. Yes, they're completely different. However, Leo is also 14. And when we read about this online, Leo and I both agreed. And Leo thought along similar lines as I did. So, again, is it a rearing thing? Some. You have to remember that, while parents see their kids 8 hours a day, maybe, teachers also see them, okay, for 8 hours a day, at least 180 days a year. There's also media and their friends and gaming and everything else that goes on in their world. So I'm not saying that it's solely a parent's responsibility to guide and rear, and the whole mentality of a village, it's true. There's teachers, there's principals, there's neighbors, there's church peers, there's friends' families. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that go into making a person a person. So, and the point of this is one, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody in my fire company for what happened. I'm not even pointing fingers inward. I'm not pointing fingers at that young person or his parent or Leo or the sibling or 911. I'm not pointing. There's no finger pointing, and there's no blame to be had. This is literally an opinion-based rant, for lack of a better term. It's and that line that they say, Monday morning quarterbacks. This is exactly what it is. What happened to me happened 2 weeks ago. It was 2 weeks on Sunday. I have had 2 weeks to process, think, compartmentalize, rationalize, debate, argue, stomp my feet, roll my eyes, all of it. Okay, I've had 2 weeks to think about it before it actually, and so it's not like it's fresh in my head and I'm flying off the cuff or drawing from the hip. This is something that I thought about, and like I said, because it was my first, I wanted to talk about it because I don't want anybody to ever have to go through that. I mean, like it's gut wrenching. I say that, and then in the same breath go, well, I was able to compartmentalize, but like I said, as soon as that meeting was done, I ran to my car and bawled. But in the same breath, like I said, it's gut wrenching, and yeah, I handled myself as best I could in the moment, and then processed afterwards. Students or children don't get that opportunity because, again, in most cases, they don't think rationally; they just kind of react. So, how do we handle it going forward? See, I knew that question was coming up. I'm going to rant, right? I'm going to complain, and I forget who it was who told me, but somebody said, "Okay, if you don't like the solution, that's fine. Come up with something better. If I don't like what happened in a situation, that's fine. Tell me how to fix it, but don't just complain about it." So, how do I handle it? Again, I can wear a name tag that says my name is Gabriel, and I go by he and him. Tempting, and I just might do it. I can make an announcement on the Facebook page for the fire company that says, I'm Gabriel, and I'm a he, him, and I would prefer that you address me that way. I did speak to a trustee, one of the higher-ups of the fire company, and asked what he thought of it, how to approach it. It really wasn't as helpful as I'd hoped. He did say, though, that, again, we could have the president in the next meeting identify me as, but until everything was legal, none of my stuff had to be changed, which I'm fine with. I don't care about that part anyway. That is in the making and what have you. But like I said, there are ways to handle it. So how do I handle... So if I've handled that, then how do I handle my emotional part? Okay. One, I can go back on my meds. I probably should go back on my PTSD meds. Yes, like so many other people, I do take medications. My PTSD med stems from a fire incident a couple years ago, in which we lost a firefighter very tragically, and that still nags at me. And so, yes, I'm on medication. It brings my moods down. It keeps me from spiking. It's kind of like bipolar, but a little different. Anyway, so get back on my meds. Absolutely. Talk to a therapist about it. Sure. Talk to family about it. Kind of hard, considering that, the family is part of the situation. I did talk to my dad and my stepmom about it. They were understanding, a little confused because they're not really 100% sure, but they're still trying to kind of wrap their head around it, but they at least used the right pronouns and names while we were there for Easter. And then there's talking to supportive friends about it and getting ideas, getting, brain pans together and, bashing away until a couple ideas come out. Okay. As far as the children go, okay, because anxiety is anxiety, let's face it. My favorite, all-time favorite, mindfulness tool, it's called mindfulness. And anybody who wants to look up mindfulness, I seriously suggest it. There are tons of mindfulness programs out there in schools right now. You can find them online. I've taken a couple of classes on mindfulness and kind of recentering, and we don't call it yoga, but that's pretty much what it is. But there's definitely breathing techniques involved. But like I said, my favorite, my all-time favorite, and Leo hates this one, is the 5 things. How's it go? I'm glad you asked. Leo didn't ask, but I knew you were all kind of like going, okay, well, what's 5 things? All right, so 5 things. If you're in a panic, or if you know somebody who's, again, having anxiety, ask them 5 things. Use your 5 senses. It's 5 things you can see, and make sure they list them off. Okay? 4 things that you can hear. 3 things that you can smell. 2 things you can touch. 1 thing that you can taste. Okay, and the concept is, and again, it's about the 5 senses and counting 5 different things. If you get the order wrong, it's no big deal. If you get the senses, as long as you've used all 5 senses. Don't go out and find 5 things to lick. Don't. All right? There's always somebody. And Leo just laughed because he's like, yeah, that was me. The thing of it is that, while they're hunting for those things in their environment, while they're looking for 5 things, or smelling a few things, or touching the carpet underneath their hands, it's bringing those sensories back down as far as the anxiety goes. It's allowing the person to, even though it only takes like 30 seconds, it's allowing the mind to refocus, kind of almost like an on-off. You know how we flip the switch on the modem to reset it? That's pretty much what we're doing. All right, so 5 things, okay? And again, if you think about them while you're doing them, don't just name them, but think about them. Like 5 things. It's spring, at least here in NEPA, and yesterday there was snow on the ground. Today it's in the 50s. So if I go outside, I can smell the mud, and that's just that. Take that deep breath in and just smell that mud and hold on to it for a second. And your brain, again, now you're thinking about that warm sun hitting your face. And if you get off track on those 5 things, well, hey, off track on 5 things is a lot better than on track on an anxiety. All right, so, again, that's my favorite one. There are others. There's tons of coping mechanisms. And I'm sure that anybody who's had a therapist or knows a therapist or has spoken to a therapist can give you other ones. There's tracing squares with your fingers on objects, tracing circles, coloring. Coloring is one of my absolute favorites. I mean, the 5 things is my favorite, but coloring is the most therapeutic thing in the world. It can be a Dollar Tree coloring book, or it can be one of those adult coloring books. My father bought me a cussing one a couple years ago for Christmas. It is my second favorite coloring book, right next to the guinea pig one. Yes, I have a guinea pig coloring book. Don't knock it until you try it. So, like I said,